Hello everyone! It's so wonderful to see you today and happy fall! It's my favorite time of the year and we're going to be painting a lovely pumpkin today and a sunflower. Who doesn't love pumpkins and sunflowers? Who doesn't love Halloween? Who doesn't love the fall colors? What are some of the fall colors? Do you know the fall colors, boys and girls? There's red, there's orange, there's yellow, there's gold, and there's aubergine, and that's my name. So I would love to paint with you today, boys and girls. So I'm just going to give you a list of the supplies that we're going to need today, and I hope that you have all of these in your kingdom. If not, we can tell you how to mix some colors too, except for the primary colors. The primary colors are red, yellow, and blue, and if you don't have those three colors, I can't tell you how to mix them because they're the primary colors. But we are going to be working with acrylic paint or tempera if you have it in your kingdom, or if you want to join us with some crayons or markers or colored pencils or even watercolors or pastels, whatever you have around, just to have some fun today for fall. So we're going to be painting this painting right here, and it's a pumpkin with a sunflower, and there's some vines and a stem and some leaves. And then if you'll notice right back here on the back, there's a moon kind of glowing, and I'll show you how I did that. It's really kind of cool, so it'll be something a little different for you to learn today. So my color palette today, boys and girls, is going to be basically every color of the rainbow, including black, brown, and black. I also have white on hand as well. So what we're going to be doing is some different size brushes. These are soft. I'm using what's called a mixed media paper, but you can use canvas as well. If you're using canvas, you may want to use a mixture of brushes, maybe some stiffer brushes and maybe some soft brushes. So I have some different sizes here that I'm going to be using, and I also have like a detail brush too. So if you have something that's going to be a little bit on the smaller side for detail, for your vines, you might want to pick up something a little bit smaller and thinner for your vines. Okay, so there's the brushes that we're going to be using. I have paper towels, I have a container for water with water in it, and I also have glue for if you want to put any gems on later on. I have tacky glue, and I also have Q-tips to apply the glue so we don't get it all over our fingers. And I also have glitter, which is more of an iridescent glitter, so it just has some shimmer to it, like on my cheeks. So it's very pretty glitter. And then I also have iridescent gems. So if you have some gems in your kingdom, if you want to add some to the background to make it a little more sparkly, we can do that too. Okay, boys and girls, so I'm actually not going to draw today. I'm going to draw with my paintbrush. So I'm going to show you step by step on what we're doing today. And the first thing that we are going to do is paint our pumpkin, okay? This piece right here. Now you'll notice that my sunflower is overlapping, and that's okay. So what we're going to do is we're just going to draw with paint. So we're going to use a smaller brush, and I'm going to go ahead and make almost a heart shape at the very top of our pumpkin and bring it down into a round, okay? Now don't worry about the bumps on the bottom of the pumpkin because they're pretty much blocked by your sunflower, so you don't really have to be concerned with that. So just basically make almost a heart shape at the top, and then we're going to make it into a round circle. So that'll be the first thing that we do. So I'm going to get my brush here. I think I'm going to use this one. And I'm going to put it in a little bit of water to liquefy my paint a little bit to make it easier to flow on my canvas or paper. Okay, so I just put a little bit of water with my brush. Remember, when you push the brush on the palette with the water, you want to make sure it doesn't come back to you. So you don't want it to be super, super runny. You just want it to be a little bit on the thin side. Okay, so I'm going to see where I'm going to go on my canvas paper here. And I'm thinking I'm going to start right about here. So I'm just going to make my heart shape at the top. Okay. And then I'm going to continue this down into a nice big circle. Maybe I'll make this one a little bit different shape. I think I'm going to make this one a little bit more on the taller side, because there's all different shapes and sizes of pumpkins, boys and girls. So if you want to make your pumpkin big and round, Or if you want to make it more oval and taller like this one, remember this one's a little more round, so you can make some different pumpkin shape if you would like, okay? So now you'll look at the pumpkin, what you think about. Before we do the lines in the pumpkin, we're going to draw our circle for the center of our sunflower, okay? So the first thing I'm going to do with that, boys and girls, is I'm just going to come down here and think about where I want to put my sunflower. And I'm going to overlap my pumpkin line with my line for my sunflower. So I'm just going to make a circle for the center of my sunflower. Okay? Now I'm going to go ahead and do my lines in my pumpkin. Now if you look at this, boys and girls, there is 2 lines that come from the center of that opening where the heart was. So I'm going to come down into a curve and come down into a curve. Remember, the pumpkin has a roundness to it, so you want to keep your lines as curved as possible, okay? So this one's going to be curved here, and this one's going to be curved. Those are the first 2 that I'm going to do, okay? So I'm just going to take this line right here. Remember this little heart-shaped line? And I'm going to take this out, and I'm going to make it like an oval, like it's curved. And on this side too. It's almost like a teardrop shape. It's pointed on both sides. Okay? So then the next thing that I'm going to do, boys and girls, is I'm going to go ahead and do one here and one here. And basically what I'm doing is I'm dividing this and making it a curve and bringing it down. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and take this, and I'm going to come from up here, and I'm going to curve. And I'm going to come from here, and I'm going to curve all the way down. See how that happened? Look how dimensional that is already. Okay? So what's the next thing on our pumpkin? What is this thing called? You fans of Cinderella should know this. What is that? That's a stem, and there's lots and lots of vines. We're not going to draw the vines yet because we do want to block in our background before we do the vines, but we're going to draw our stem, and our stem is shaped kind of like a hook. So if you notice when you go to the pumpkin patch that there's very long, windy stems on pumpkins. So we're going to make this almost like a hook, like a candy cane, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and make that shape, and I'm coming right out of the top of my pumpkin, okay? So I'm going to make this shape, and I'm just going to hook it. And then I'm going to hook it again. Okay? Now the inside of the pumpkin right here, you'll see that this is almost a star. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points. But they're curved into those lines that we made. So that is the stem as it sits on top of the pumpkin. So what you want to do for that, boys and girls, is you just basically want to take these lines that you already have and make them a little bit more star-shaped, like pointed. And then I'm going to color in my stem brown. So I have my 5 points and my stem brown. Okay. Now we're going to jump down to the sunflower, and we're going to do this whole entire circle brown. Okay. So you want to take your brown, and if you'd like to make more of a pouncing motion with your brown, like I think you did with the sunflower princess, you can go ahead and make your center of your sunflower more pouncy like this. Just bounce up and down with your brush, okay? Or you can fill it in solid, whatever you feel more comfortable with. But I'm going to pounce it because I think it looks more like the inside of a sunflower by doing that. So I'm going to go ahead and pounce this in. Pouncy, pounce, pounce, pounce. It has a little bit of texture to it when you do it like that. Okay, so you can do it like that if you'd like to. Now, we're not going to paint the leaves on yet because blue is one of the colors that it takes to make green. So it's okay if we can go over top of the blue at the very end to put the leaves on. It will cover just fine, so you don't have to worry about that. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do, boys and girls, is I'm going to go ahead and start my pumpkin. All right, so what I want to do, if you don't have any orange on your palette, you want to mix, here's my palette just so you can see how pretty it is. Look how rainbow colors. So if you don't have any orange on your palette, what you would do is you'd mix a little bit of yellow, take a section of yellow and put it maybe on this side of your palette where it's bare, and just take a tiny bit of red, and start making your orange. You never want to take a lot of red and put it right into your yellow, because what happens is the red is so strong that it does what's called saturate the color. So you're not going to be able to get your color. And it's always better to build that color up gradually than it is to try to take it back to where you had it before. Okay, see my orange right there? I just put little drops of red in there to make that orange. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start blocking in my pumpkin. And I'm going to take my pumpkin and just block it in around those brown lines with the orange first. That's the first thing I want to do, is just block in. Try to keep your brown lines intact on your picture. And intact means that you want them to still be visible if you can. So I'm going to go ahead and put that on. See how I'm blocking in my orange? So I'm going to keep doing that. I'm going to do my big section now. And when you paint something that's round, you want to try to take your brush strokes round too. You don't want to ever go this way. You want to try to go the same direction to keep the roundness of the item that you're painting, okay? So I'm going up and down and round with my lines to keep this nice and smooth for my pumpkin. When you get too much paint, you want to just drag back through and smooth it out. So I'm going to have one over here. And I have one more section to paint orange. So we have 5 sections to our pumpkin. One big middle section and 2 smaller sections on either side. Okay, now the fun part comes. While the paint is wet, I'm actually going to just drop right into my yellow paint. I'm not even going to rinse my brush. I'm just going to grab some of my yellow while my paint is wet, and I'm just going to start swishing through some yellow. And I'm not even thinking about where it's going. I'm just swishing it in. See how I'm swishing it in? But remember, try to keep your paintbrush going the same direction as your lines on the pumpkin. That'll make it look more round, okay? So I'm going round with my brush. See how I'm putting that yellow color on there? And it brightens it up. Already it's getting to be more dimensional. Okay, again, while it's still wet, because I'm working with oranges and yellows, I'm not even going to rinse my brush. I'm going to go ahead and dip into my red. So I'm going to grab my red and I'm going to put it with my orange. I'm going to make more of a tangerine colored orange. You know what a tangerine is? Did you eat those little tiny cuties? So we want a brighter orange. See my brighter orange? So I have my brighter orange. In my brighter orange, I'm going to put closer to where the sunflower is to create a little bit of a shadow. See how I'm brushing that upward to shade it? And I'll put some there. And I'm going to put some down around the base of the pumpkin, the bottom of the pumpkin, to give it a little more dimension there. And maybe underneath where the other piece of the pumpkin petal is, and over here, and over here. So you could put the shading wherever you think it would look good as far as the dimensions of the pumpkin. Now when you go up around the stem part too, if you'd like to put some shading up there, that's also going to have some darkness around it because that's deep inside the inside of the pumpkin into the where the stem is. So you want to put a little bit of shading up there too. Okay, so I put the darker red mixture with the orange around the top where the stem is. See how I'm brushing the paint like this, making it nice and curved with the size of the pumpkin. And then I'm coming down around the bottom and doing brush strokes up to make it nice and round here and here and here and here. And then behind where the sunflower is going to live, I put some shading there. Okay. So the last color that I want to make before I move on to my sunflower is I'm going to make a lemon yellow color. And this one I do want to rinse my brush for. So I'm going to rinse my brush. And I'm going to wipe it off on my paper towel. Get the moisture out of it. And then I'm going to go back to my palette and I'm going to put a little tiny bit of water back in my brush. Just dip it in there to get it a little bit water. I'm going to put the white paint with a little bit of my yellow, and I'm going to make a lemon yellow. See, that's like a soft lemon yellow. And I like to do like highlighting. So what I'm going to do basically is just come back in here and brush a little bit of the white yellow mixture up next to the lines on the pumpkin to give it a little bit of highlighting. That's where the light hits it. And maybe on the front of the pumpkin, I'll put some lines and maybe a couple on the sides. Okay. So you have a lot of shading already on your pumpkin. We did all these different steps. We did the orange, and then we went back in, and what did we do next? We shaded it with some reddish color, and then we put some yellow. Oh no, first we did the yellow over top of the orange. Then we did our red shading with our orange, like our tangerine color, and then we put in our highlights. Okay, so those are some different things that you can do to shade the pumpkin. Okay, see how it makes it look three-dimensional? Okay. All right, so now I'm going to rinse my brush again, and I am going to go straight for my yellow and start working on my sunflower. Okay, so you can use different shades of yellow if you want. I'm going to use this lighter shade of yellow, but I also have this golden shade of yellow too, but I am going to use this lighter shade of yellow. And all I'm going to do, boys and girls, and I think you remember you did this with the sunflower princess. She made like a sunshine with her yellow, and then she turned it into the petals. So you want to make like a sunshine. That's why they call it a sunflower. And make a sunshine. So I'm just making some lines around the outside of my flower. See how I made a sunshine? And then I'm going to turn them into petals. So what I'm going to do to turn them into petals, boys and girls, is I'm just going to take the top line and bring it down into a curve. So you're going to take the top line, this one, and bring it down to the circle. Almost like you're making a teardrop. Okay? If you would like to make them a little bit more pointed on the ends, like the ones on my first image, you can curve them up a little bit too. So instead of making them just round, you can hook them like you did with your stem. You could just hook the top. You go all the way around your flower and you can make your sunflower petals. Going all the way around my flower. And we'll put some more detail and so forth once we get the background blocked in, because we don't want to try to go around our detail with background color. Okay, so there's my sunflower so far. Now I'm going to jump right into doing the background, boys and girls. So the first thing I did with my background, you can see it's a really unusual color. Isn't it an unusual color? So what I did, boys and girls, is I first blocked in blue, okay? And then when I was done with the blue and it was dry after I did the rest of the details and everything on my pumpkin, I kind of put in the circle in the back with white. And then I went over top of it with purple. And then I put purple around the edges and so forth going into the illustration. So it has like more of a deep, dark midnight hue, okay? So I'll show you how to do that step by step. But the first thing that we're going to do is rinse our brush, because if we keep yellow on our brush and put blue on it, what color is our background going to be? Green! So we don't want a green sky. So we're going to make a dark blue sky. So we want to rinse our yellow brush. Make sure you clean it out real good. And if your water's getting dirty, you can get more clean water. I have another container here that I'm switching out my clean water for. And I'm just going to start blocking in my blue. So all I'm going to do is take my blue and I'm going to go in between my petals first. And this is going to take you a couple minutes. So you can just block in all your blue color. And you can use two different size brushes if you want to. Go around the small areas with a small brush, and then once you get into the large areas, you can graduate to a bigger brush and paint the larger areas with the bigger brush. Whatever you're comfortable with, boys and girls. See how I'm going around my flowers first? I have so far. So I'm going to go around my pumpkin now. When you go in around something, boys and girls, what you want to do if you're drawing basically with your paintbrush is you take your paintbrush and you want to think about a painter, what a painter does in a house. A painter uses what's like called an angle sash, and they angle the line in towards what they're painting so they can go around it. See how I did that? I angled it inward, so I went all the way around my pumpkin and I didn't even move my brush, okay? And you also want to add just a slight bit of water to your brush just to help you move your paint, okay? So you don't, just a slight bit, you don't need a lot of water. And you can do the same thing on this side. You can go up and around your pumpkin. See how I outlined that in no time at all? Again, that's by taking your brush and angling it in towards your subject that you're painting. Like as if you're a painter painting corners in a room. We don't need painter's tape. So I'm dragging my brush down to fill in a large area. I'm just chasing my paint down my paper. And when I get to the bottom, I go to the horizontal side and then pull the paint back down vertically to cover in that section. So now I'm going to go up to the top of my paper. I'm going to put a line here to fill this part in, and I'm going to go across the top. to block this in into almost a rectangle for myself. And when I do that, it gives me a nice clean edge that I can go into. So I just start pulling that paint. See how I'm filling in a large area? Blocking this in. And I'm pulling my paint down to make in a big area. Almost done with my background. How's your background coming along, boys and girls? It's a pretty color blue, isn't it? The moon was so fun to paint. I know you're really going to have fun with that. Maybe you can add a witch flying over the moon, or some bats. Maybe the Batman logo in the sky. That would be cool. I know our friend, the Dark Mistress of Evil, is going to be back sometime in October, and she's going to paint a haunted house with all of you. So that will be a lot of fun. Okay, almost done. Just have a little bit more background to do. There we are. So my first color of my background is all blocked in, which is my deep royal blue. So I'm going to let that dry a little bit. And I'm going to go back to my sunflower. I'm going to rinse this brush because I'm not going to use this brush anymore. I do want to get something a little bit on the smaller side. And I think I'm going to go with this one. And I do need some clean water, so I'm going to take my clean water and put it in my bowl here and get some new water. Okay, so I'm going to go back over top of my sunflower petals, another coat of yellow to cover them up a little bit more. So that's the first thing I'm going to do, is I'm going to give my petals an extra coat of yellow. Just because I want them to really pop up against the pumpkin. See how they're coming out a little bit more stronger now that I have it on a second coat of paint? You can always put more paint over things, boys and girls. That way it's going to make it much more easily scenes of what you're trying to paint. And if you make a mistake, you can always wait for it to dry and go back over top of it. So paint covers paint, so don't worry about that. Okay, so I recoated my sunflower. Okay, so now I'm going to take my even smaller brush. I like this one. I think actually I want this blue one instead. So I'm going to take my small brush and I'm going to use my brown that I used for the center of my sunflower. And I'm just going to outline each of my petals just so they pop against that blue sky. I'm putting a little bit more detail into each of these petals by putting an outline around the outside. And if you lay your wrist down as you're doing this and kind of just guide it with your hand, It's much easier than trying to go, you know, like this. So if you put your hand down on something, it's much easier to guide your hand. If you wanted to wait till your paint dried completely and do this step maybe with a brown Sharpie marker instead of a paintbrush, you can also do that too. But you'd have to wait for your paint to dry completely to outline the petals, because you don't want to touch a marker to paint, because it will ruin your Sharpie marker if you do that. So we're almost done outlining our petals. Just have a few more. Okay, outline the petals. Okay. Then I'm going to go ahead and put a line going through each of these petals with the brown again, just to divide the petal. So I'm making a little bit of this, almost the sunshine again, but with the brown. So I'm dividing my petals. Okay. Then I'm going to take the end of my paintbrush, and if you have a little bit of black on your palette, you want to dip the end of your paintbrush, this side of your paintbrush, in your black, and you can make some little dots in the inside of this brown. Just make some dots. So you dip the paint and just tap it on your canvas or paper. And you could put as many of those dots in there as you would like. The more seeds you put inside your sunflower, the more it looks like a true sunflower. Now I'm also going to wipe off the end of the paintbrush, and I'm going to go ahead and grab some of my yellow, and I'm going to do that same thing. And I'm going to put some of the yellow dots on the inside too. And I'm not even thinking about it. I'm not making any kind of pattern or anything. I'm just putting them in randomly. That's what makes them look more realistic, when you just kind of put them in randomly and not think about where you're putting them. Art's supposed to be fun. You don't have to fret about small details. Look how fun that is. All you did was turn your paintbrush upside down, right? Okay. So, our pumpkin needs to have some leaves. So these leaves are kind of interesting, aren't they? They're almost like points. There's 3 points on either side. 1, 2, 3, and then a rounded point at the top. They're similar to a maple leaf or like a grapevine leaf. If you've ever seen one of those before, or maybe ivy, but ivy's a little more pointed. So we're gonna like kind of come out and round out to a point on each of those. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So the first thing I want to do, boys and girls, is I want to think about where I want to put my leaves. And if you don't have green, you can mix some blue with some yellow to make green. And you would want to start with your yellow first and then add your blue gradually until you get your green, okay? So you can go ahead and try doing that if you don't have green on your palette. So I'm going to use a larger brush now, not too much larger, maybe this one. And I'm going to take my green. I have 2 different shades of green. I have a lime green and I have a bright green. So I have 2 different shades of green. And I'm going to take my lime green first, and I'm going to go ahead and draw my shape for my leaf. So I think my leaf is going to go on this time. I'm going to do it a little differently. I think I'm going to put my leaves over here. So I'm going to make a point. And then I'm going to come out on this side and make one on either side. It almost looks like a fish right now. I'm going to round that out. And I'm going to make another one of those. And then I think I'll make one more. So there's one here. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay. And I'm going to put a line going through the center of it so it looks like the middle of the leaf. So the other one I think I'm going to put down here at the bottom of my pumpkin. So this one I'm going to put maybe overlapping my pumpkin a little bit. So I'm going to put one. Remember I did a rounded point to start, like a fish. And then I made one here and one on the other side. And then I'm going to make another one, another fish, and another fish. And then I'm going to make one more. And then I'm going to put a line through it. So there's one here, and there's one up here. If you want to add more leaves to your vine, you can add as many leaves as you'd like, but I'm only going to do 2 for purposes of demonstration. I'm going to go ahead and fill these leaves in now. I'm going to grab my darker green, and I'm going to fill these leaves in. So I'm going to block them in. It's nice and solid. Here's my first one. And I'm going to fill in my second one. Okay, so I have both my leaves filled in. I am probably going to put a second coat of paint on those. I'm just going to let them set for a couple minutes and dry. Okay. So now while that's drying, boys and girls, the next thing I'm going to do is that moon I told you about. So what I'm going to do for that moon is I'm going to grab a nice clean brush because I don't want anything that has paint or has touch paint because I want it to be white. And I'm going to go ahead and get some white paint on my brush. And all I'm going to do, boys and girls, is I'm going to make a circle against this blue. So I'm thinking like on this painting, I think I'm going to put it on this side. So I'm going to put my moon, I'm just making a circle. And I'm just going to fill this in with white. I'm going to let this dry for a couple seconds, okay? Then I'm going to go back to my green again and put my second coat of green on my leaves. starting to cover real nice over top of my blue because green's a secondary color and it does take yellow and blue to make green. So they will eventually cover themselves up. See how much darker that leaf is? Okay, so I'm going to do the other leaf again. So I have both those leaves blocked in a little bit darker. Now while this is wet, does anybody remember what the complement of green is? I'm wearing a lot of it. What color is this? Somebody said it. That's right, it's red. So if you mix a little tiny bit of red in with your green, it's going to become like a more of a pine or forest green, okay? So I'll show you what I mean. So here's my palette. I'm going to take this green right here. And I'm just going to dip my red into my brush here. See my little bit of red? And I'm going to mix that together. And look what happens to that green. You see how it got darker? You could make it even darker if you want. Just put little tiny bits of red. You see that? So I got a darker shade of green by doing that. So what I want to do is put those veins back in to my leaf. So I'm going to put that vein up to center. I'm going to make it a little bit darker so you can see it on camera because it's saturating since it's red. There we go. You see that line I just did in that darker green? So I'm going to do the same thing on my other leaf. And this time I'm even going to add a little bit of blue into that same mixture so I get more of a deeper evergreen green, like a Christmas tree, okay? So I just add a little bit of extra blue to that. And I'm gonna outline this leaf a little bit to give it some dimension. So I'm just going around the outside edges of my leaf. See how I punch those leaves up a bit? Okay, so now I'm going to rinse my brush. And I'm going to grab a little bit of yellow. I'm going to go back through this leaf while it's still wet, and I'm just going to dry brush a little bit of yellow in here. Dry brush means that your brush doesn't have a lot of paint on it, and it doesn't have a lot of water on it. So if you just rinsed your brush and you tapped it on your paper towel, while your paint is wet, you can blend this leaf. Do you see that? So take a little bit of yellow while this leaf is still wet and just dry brush back through your leaf and give your leaf some shading. Okay, that adds some dimension to your leaves. Okay, so now boys and girls, before I do my vines, I'm going to go back over that moon and show you how to do that. So what I want to do now is rinse my brush again and get a nice clean brush because I want to get some purple. So I've got some purple on my brush. And I'm going to go ahead and just go right over top of my moon with the purple. See how I'm kind of just swishing through it? So I'm just going to soften it out and brush right through my moon with my purple. Then I'm going to take that blue again with my brush still having purple on it and just brush a little bit of blue back through there. So it gives it like that hazy kind of autumn moon. You see that? Now, once you have that done, boys and girls, if you want to get a little bit larger brush, I'm going to get this brush now. And I'm going to take my purple and I'm going to just start washing back through my blue. So my paint's already dry. So if I put a little bit of water with my purple, I can just kind of dry brush back through with a little bit of a wet brush and pick up more of an interesting sky by doing that. So I'm just going in around these pieces, and I'm not doing the whole sky. I'm just kind of blocking in sections of it to give it some interest. See how it makes that sky start to look more midnight blue? So I'm going to block some around here, around behind the sunflower. And I'm going to put some down here behind this part of the sunflower. And this purpley blue is really going to make our pumpkin pop out, as well as our leaves and our sunflower, because it's going to add more contrast to our background. And when you're happy with that, or if you did a little too much purple and you want to put a little bit more blue back in, you can just play with it by adding colors back and forth until you like it. I think I'm going to put a little bit more purple up here. There. Okay. See how it adds an interesting look to the sky? Okay. So I don't need this brush anymore, so I'm going to go ahead and rinse that one. And I'm going to now go into doing some details. Who doesn't love details? So I'm going to use my smaller brush, which is this little skinny one, this little turquoise colored brush with the little bristles. And I'm going to go ahead and liquefy my brown again. So I want my brown to be nice and loose and liquefied. So remember, if you push the water on your palette and it doesn't come back to you, that's a good consistency to draw with your paintbrush, okay? So you want it to be very liquefied, but not so runny that it comes right off your palette. You want it to come back to you, okay? So push it on your palette and have it come back to you. And then what I'm going to do, boys and girls, is I'm going to start making some vines. So what you want to do when you make your vines is you just want to be nice and loose with your paintbrush. You don't want to try to be real stiff. So hold your paintbrush a little further up on your paintbrush handle, like up here, so you don't have so much pressure down here and you're not real close to your canvas. The further up on your paintbrush you hold your handle, the more loose your stroke is, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and do this and get some paint on here and do some vines. And all I'm going to do for my vines is I'm going to just make like swirly cues. And I'm going to lighten them up a little bit so you can see them here on the canvas, because I know it's going to be dark on camera. So I'm going to make them more of a yellow shade, but you can make them whatever shade of brown you want. Okay. Now you can also make like a hook on the end of your vine too. So if you make one that is coming off, and then maybe you make it more like a hook. You see that? So you can play around with your lines a little bit, boys and girls, and make some fancy vines that are very whimsical and, you know, one of a kind that you created. So that'll be fun to try. So I'm going to go ahead and make a few more of those. If you want one to come off your stem, you can have one come off the top of your stem too. And you can make that one a little bit wider if you'd like. So I'm using more of like a golden brown so you can see it on camera. And remember, Cinderella's pumpkin had many, many vines on it. So you can put as many vines on your pumpkin as you'd like. And if you've been to the pumpkin patch, you know that there's lots of vines on the pumpkins. Or if you grow some pumpkins in your own yard, So I'm going to put some more maybe coming off of this other vine on the other side. And maybe I'll put this one a little bit darker so you can see it better. Maybe one more up here. So I added a whole bunch of vines to my pumpkin. Okay. So once you have your vines on your pumpkin, boys and girls, I did do some shading on my stem. If you see the lines on my stem with the yellowy lemon color. And remember, all I did was put a little bit of yellow in with my white to get it like a lemon yellow color. So I'm going to do that again and do some highlights on my stem. And all I did for that, boys and girls, is I just put, for this, I'm going to come closer to my canvas. So I do want to put my wrist down so I can get a stronger line. And I'm going to make a few lines coming side by side, coming up my pumpkin lines, up the stem. Okay. So maybe I might even punch that up a little bit with a little bit more white just to make it pop more. So I'm going to come real close to my canvas again with my hand, and I'm going to bring those lines up. Okay. Now, boys and girls, you can also add some veins to your leaves if you'd like. If you want to put some brown lines in the center of your veins, do some veins, or some dark green. And I think I will do that today. I think I'm going to add a little bit of dark green. And remember, I did make a really nice pine colored, like forest Christmas evergreen green by putting a little bit of blue in with my green that I already had, so that's more of a Christmas tree green. And I'm going to go ahead and put some veins in my leaves. And you can put as many veins as you want. So if you want to put them coming up on either side of the parts of the leaf, like this. Or you can also put some other extensions coming off of those veins if you'd like to have some like this. More like a Y-shaped vein. So I'm going to go ahead and put these up here. Put some veins in my leaves. I'm going to rinse that brush because I am going to get a little more white. I want to get straight up white, and I want to use that on my sunflower to highlight it a little bit. So if you'll see real close on this sunflower, you see these white lines on my sunflower? I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm just going to grab my white with a little bit of water on my brush, nice and loose with my paint, and I'm just going to come back in on my sunflower and add some white lines for some accents. And then you've seen the other princesses use white paint to highlight, so sometimes on the watercolor paintings. See how it makes it look a little bit more dimensional. Okay. And then the last thing that I'm going to do, boys and girls, is I'm going to go ahead and show you that I put glitter on here. And I use like a liquid glitter. This is a liquid kind of gel glitter. And there's like Twinkles and some other brands out there that you can use from the craft aisle. So I'm just going to squirt out a little bit of glitter. And I'm going to use a brush that is a little bit on the stiff side so that it adheres to the canvas or paper better. And I'm just going to start brushing my glitter. And I'm not really thinking about where I put it because when the light hits it, it's going to be like iridescent so that it's caught by the light. So you don't need to like cover the whole entire pumpkin with glitter if you're using glitter. You do what's just called accent, and you just brush it over pieces of your painting. It's almost like a greeting card illustration effect. If you've ever seen some fancy greeting cards in the greeting card aisle, or if you're mommy or daddy's gotten you some really cool greeting cards over the years that have some sparkles on them. It's similar to that effect. So it gives you just a nice little iridescent, happy glow for the holiday that's coming up, which is fall and Halloween and Thanksgiving and all those wonderful times of the year for this beautiful season. And if you want to put some on your sunflower, you can just put some on your sunflower as well. See, I'm just kind of jumping around on my paper to make it random. I'm not doing every single petal. I'm not doing every single part of the painting, just randomly putting it on there. Maybe I'll pop some into the center of the sunflower. There. So I'll show you what that looks like because you can see the light when it hits the glitter. Okay, so it's got like an iridescence to it, okay? So that's what I did for the glitter. And then the last thing you can do, boys and girls, is you can draw some stars in the sky if you want to, or you can put, like I said, a witch flying over with her broom, like a silhouette of a witch, or you could put a bat flying around or a ghost or anything that you want that's making it festive for you. And then I also have some glittery gems. So these are like very sparkly too. They're like iridescent, okay? So if you want to use some iridescent gems and maybe add a few accents maybe to the inside of the sunflower or maybe to the moon so it looks like stars in the sky, whatever you'd like to do is I'm going to use some tacky glue, and I'm going to put my tacky glue out on my palette. I don't want to use Elmer's because Elmer's probably won't hold my gems very well. But you can also use stick-on gems if you have stick-on gems too. Those will work very nicely. So I have a Q-tip. And I like to use the Q-tips that are from the dollar store because they're not as cottony as a cotton swab. And I just use a little bit of glue, and I'm going to put some on my canvas. I don't want to try to put the actual paint, actual glue on the gem and then stick it on because then I just get my fingers all sticky. So if I just put the paint or the glue on with my Q-tip, you can put as many gems on your picture as you'd like. So I'm going to make these like they're stars in the sky. That's good. And see how I like roll the Q-tip? So if I roll the Q-tip, the glue comes right off for me, nice and lightly. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and set that down and then grab some gems. And I'm not really thinking about the size of the gems. I'm just going to put different random ones on here because I think it's going to add more interest to my picture. So I'm putting it right over top of my glue. Makes a nice sparkle. Nice festive sparkle. Put a little one down here. Another medium-sized one up here. Maybe another one right here. And last but not least, one right there. And there you go. There's our sparkly, fun, festive fall pumpkin with yours truly, Aubergine the Fall Fairy. I hope you guys had a really good time doing that with me today. And if you didn't get a chance to watch the whole thing, I will be posting it on Crystal Queen so that you can see it step by step and maybe do it with some of your family members, your grandma and your grandpa, your sisters and your brothers, and your friends from school or whatever you'd like. And be looking for the Mistress of Evil coming up very soon, probably the next couple of weeks. And she's going to be painting a haunted house with all of you. And we might just have to throw in another one for the holiday season for Halloween, because Halloween's a lot of fun. So everybody stay safe. Everybody be having a good day and have fun. And we'll see you real soon. Bye, everybody.